"Mom, did you enjoy the condo I bought for you downtown?" my son asked, smiling like he had just given me the world. I blinked at him, my hand still resting on the edge of the kitchen counter. "What condo?" I said quietly. "I never received anything." That was the moment everything shifted. My daughter-in-law, Claire, who had been scrolling on her phone just seconds earlier, slowly looked up. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The way her eyes flickered, just for a second, told me more than any confession ever could. "I'm glad you're here. Follow my story until the end, and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story reaches, because I never imagined mine would turn into something like this." It was supposed to be a simple Sunday lunch, the kind I still prepared out of habit, even though no one really expected me to anymore. Roast chicken in the oven, green beans with garlic, mashed potatoes just the way my son, Daniel, used to love when he was a boy. The house smelled warm, familiar, safe. At least I thought it was. It had been 3 years since my husband, Harold, passed away. 38 years of marriage reduced to a quiet house and a closet I still hadn't had the courage to clean out completely. People say you get used to the silence. You don't. You just learn how to carry it. Daniel visited less after the funeral. At first, it made sense. Grief, work, life moving forward. Then the visits became shorter, more distracted. Eventually, they turned into scheduled appearances, usually when Claire suggested it. Claire was always polite, always smiling, always just a little too perfect. But there was something about her that never quite settled right with me. Not anything I could point to directly, just small things. The way she answered questions for Daniel before he could speak. The way she gently redirected conversations whenever money came up. The way she would say, "Don't worry about that, Mom, we've got it handled," even when no one asked her to. And over time, Daniel stopped asking me about things. He used to call me twice a week. Now it was once every few weeks, and even then, it felt formal, like I was someone he used to. No, but I never complained. Because that's what mothers do. We adjust. We make space. We tell ourselves, he's busy. He's building his life. We don't ask what part of that life we've been quietly removed from. That Sunday, everything felt almost normal. Daniel laughed at something on his phone. Claire complimented the food. I poured iced tea into the same glasses we'd used for years. And then he said it. That one sentence. "Mom, I'm really glad you like the condo. Claire and I spent months finding the right one for you." There was pride in his voice. Genuine pride. Which made it worse. Because he believed it. "I don't have a condo, Daniel," I said, setting the pitcher down slowly. "I've been living here. The same house. The same bills. The same." I stopped. Because suddenly, everything I had been struggling with over the past 2 years rushed back all at once. The rising utility bills I could barely keep up with. The prescription I started cutting in half to make it last longer. The winter I kept the thermostat at 60 degrees because I couldn't afford anything higher. And all this time, he thought he was helping me. Daniel frowned, confusion replacing that proud smile. "What do you mean?" I transferred everything. The deed, the maintenance payments, even the HOA fees. Claire helped coordinate all of it. The room went very quiet. Claire stood up suddenly. "I think I left something in the car," she said quickly, already reaching for her purse. But Daniel didn't take his eyes off me. "Mom, you're telling me you never got the condo?" I shook my head. Slowly. "No," I said. "I never got anything." That's when I knew. Not just suspected. Not wondered. Knew. There was something deeply wrong here. And for the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was clarity. The kind that comes when all the small, uncomfortable pieces finally click into place. I looked at Claire as she paused by the door. She didn't meet my eyes. She didn't have to. I had already decided what I needed to do. I would find out exactly what had been taken from me, and how long it had been happening. Because one thing was suddenly very clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a story that had been written without me. And I was about to start reading every single page. That night, after they left, the house felt heavier. Not louder. Not emptier. Just different. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the dishes I hadn't washed yet. The same plates Daniel had eaten from as a boy. The same sink Harold used to stand beside every evening, drying each glass with that old cotton towel he refused to throw away. Everything was the same. Except now, nothing felt real anymore. Because for 2 years, I had been living one life, while my son believed I was living another. I turned off the kitchen light, and walked slowly into the living room. My knees ached more these days, especially when the weather shifted. The doctor said it was normal for someone my age. Normal. That word had become a quiet excuse for everything I had been enduring. Struggling to pay bills? Normal. Feeling tired all the time? Normal. Being alone most days? Normal. But this wasn't normal. I sat down in my armchair and looked around the room. The same family photos lined the walls. Daniel at age 10, holding up a baseball trophy. Daniel at his college graduation, smiling like the whole world was waiting for him. And then, Daniel on his wedding day, standing next to Claire. I had smiled in that photo too. I remember telling myself that day, she's good for him. She'll take care of him. I didn't realize she might also be taking something from me. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then I started thinking, really thinking, because once that question had been asked, did you enjoy the condo? There was no going back. Every memory from the past 2 years began to rearrange itself, like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't realized I was solving. There was the time Daniel mentioned sending me money. Just a little something to make things easier, Mom, he had said over the phone. I remember laughing it off, telling him I didn't need it, that I was managing just fine, because I thought he meant a one-time thing. I never saw a single dollar. Then there were the times Claire insisted on handling paperwork. Oh, it's just routine stuff, she'd say with that calm, reassuring smile. Tax updates, address confirmations, nothing you need to worry about. And I didn't. Because I trusted her. Because she was family. Because I thought, that's what family does. They help. They don't hide things. I opened my eyes and looked down at my hands. They were trembling slightly. Not from fear. From something else. Something sharper. Regret. Not for trusting them, but for not paying attention. For letting myself become passive. Invisible in my own life. I stood up slowly and walked to the small desk by the window. The one Harold used for bills and paperwork. I hadn't touched most of it since he passed. He used to handle everything. Always said it was one less thing for me to worry about. I used to think that was love. And maybe it was. But now, I realized something else. Not knowing leaves you defenseless. I opened the drawer. Inside were old folders, neatly labeled in Harold's careful handwriting. Insurance. Utilities. Property taxes. Bank statements. I ran my fingers over them, feeling the weight of something I had ignored for too long. If Daniel had sent money, if there was a condo in my name, if documents had been signed, then there had to be a trail. There's always a trail. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to follow it. I pulled out a folder and placed it on the desk. Then another, and another, stacking them carefully, organizing, thinking, planning, because something inside me had changed. I wasn't the woman who simply accepted things anymore. I wasn't the mother who smiled and said, "It's okay, honey," while quietly struggling behind closed doors. No, that version of me had lived through the past 2 years, and she had paid the price for it. Now, I needed answers. Not guesses. Not assumptions. Answers. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 8:47 p.m. Too late to call anyone tonight. But tomorrow, I would start with the bank. Because if money had been sent, it had to go somewhere. And if a property had been transferred, someone had signed something. I pressed my hand flat against the desk, steadying myself. For years, I had been reacting to life as it came. Now, for the first time in a long time, I was about to take control of it. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the confusion, beneath the hurt, there was something else beginning to grow. Something quiet. Something patient. Something that didn't rush, didn't panic, didn't need to raise its voice. Clarity. I turned off the light and headed toward my bedroom. Tomorrow would be the first step, not toward revenge, but toward the truth. And once I had the truth, everything else would follow. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I slept well, but because my mind wouldn't let me rest. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house. The same house I had lived in for over 30 years. The same house where I raised my son. And yet, for the first time, it didn't feel like a place of comfort. It felt like a place full of unanswered questions. I got up slowly, made myself a cup of coffee, and stood by the kitchen window. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting that soft, golden light across the backyard. Harold used to love mornings like this. He would sit right where I was standing, newspaper in hand, talking about plans for the day. Back then, everything felt certain. Now nothing did. I took a sip of my coffee and reminded myself why I was doing this. Not to accuse, not to create conflict, but to understand. Because if I didn't, I would spend the rest of my life wondering what really happened. And I wasn't willing to do that anymore. By 9:15, I was dressed and ready. A simple beige coat, comfortable shoes, my old leather handbag, the one Harold bought me years ago. Inside it, I placed everything I could find. My ID, old bank statements, a few documents with my name on them. Not much, but enough to start. The bank wasn't far. Just a 10-minute drive. I had passed by it hundreds of times over the years, but I hadn't walked inside since Harold passed. He used to handle all of it. I parked slowly, taking a moment before stepping out of the car. My hands rested on the steering wheel longer than they needed to. Not out of fear, but out of realization. This was the moment things would begin to change. I walked inside. The air was cool, quiet, professional. A young woman behind the counter looked up and smiled politely. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" Her voice was kind, neutral. I nodded slightly and stepped closer. "I'd like to check my accounts," I said. "And I may need help reviewing some transactions." She didn't question it, just nodded and guided me to a desk. "Of course, ma'am. Let's take a look." I handed her my ID. She typed for a few moments, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. Then, something changed. It was small, subtle, but I noticed it. Her expression shifted, just slightly. Not alarmed, but focused. "Is everything all right?" I asked. She looked up at me, hesitating for a second before answering. "Yes, ma'am. I just want to make sure I'm pulling up the correct records." I nodded, said nothing, because something inside me had already started paying closer attention. She turned the screen slightly toward herself, continuing to scroll. Then she paused. "Mrs. Carter," she said gently, "can you confirm your current address for me?" I gave it to her. The same address I'd had for years. She typed it in, compared something on the screen. And then, that pause came again. Longer this time. My fingers tightened slightly around the strap of my handbag. "What is it?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. She hesitated, then smiled politely again. But this time, it felt practiced. "I'm just seeing a few records here that I'd like to review more carefully," she said. "Would you mind if I brought in one of our account managers to assist?" There it was. The moment I had been expecting. I nodded. "Of course." She stepped away, leaving me sitting alone at the desk. The bank felt quieter now. Or maybe it was just me. Because in that moment, I realized something important. Whatever I was about to find was not going to be small. A few minutes later, a man in his 40s approached. Well-dressed, calm, professional. "Mrs. Carter," he said, offering a polite smile. "I'm Daniel Hughes, one of the account managers here. I understand you had some questions about your accounts." I nodded. "Yes," I said simply. "I believe there may be some transactions or assets that I'm not aware of." He studied me for a moment, not in a rude way, but carefully, like he was trying to understand how much I already knew. "All right," he said finally. "Let's go through everything together." He sat down across from me and turned the screen slightly so I could see it. Rows of numbers, dates, transfers, more than I expected, much more. "Mrs. Carter," he said gently, "before we proceed, I need to ask, have you authorized anyone to manage your financial information or make changes on your behalf in the past 2 years?" The question landed quietly, but heavily. I thought about it. About Claire. About the paperwork. About the times I didn't ask questions. "I trusted my family to help with certain things," I said carefully. He nodded. Slowly. "I understand," he replied. Then he looked back at the screen. And when he spoke again, his tone had changed. More serious now. "There are several transactions and account changes here that we're going to need to review together." I felt my heart beat just a little faster. Not out of panic, but certainty. Because whatever I had been suspecting was about to become real. I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at the screen. Lines of numbers, dates, transfers. At first, they didn't mean much. But then, patterns started to appear. "Can you scroll up a little?" I asked quietly. Mr. Hughes nodded and moved the screen. There it was. A recurring transfer. Every month. Same date. Same amount. $1,500. For 2 years. My fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the desk. "That," I said, pointing gently. "What account is that going to?" He clicked on it. Opened the details. His expression didn't change much, but I saw it. That brief pause. "The account ending in 4782, he said. It's listed under your name. I shook my head immediately. That's not my account, I said. Mine ends in 9156. He glanced at me, then back at the screen. Typed something. Checked again. Yes, he said slowly. I see your primary account here, ending in 9156, but this one, he tapped lightly on the screen, was added as an alternate account 2 years ago. 2 years. The same time Daniel said everything had been arranged. The same time Claire started helping with paperwork. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. Do you remember authorizing any changes to your banking details? He asked carefully. I took a breath. No, I said. I don't. And for the first time, I said it without hesitation. Because now, I wasn't guessing anymore. I was remembering. All the times Claire said, just sign here, Mom. All the times she said, it's just routine. All the times I didn't read closely because I trusted her. Mr. Hughes nodded slowly, as if confirming something in his own mind. There's more, he said. Of course there was. He opened another file. This is related to a property transfer, he continued. A residential property located on Lake Morrison Drive. The words landed quietly, but they echoed. Lake Morrison. The condo. Or what I thought was a condo. Can you open it? I asked. He did. Documents filled the screen. Legal language. Dates. Signatures. My name. Right there. Clear as day. Margaret Carter. I leaned forward slightly. That signature, I said softly. That's supposed to be mine? He looked at me. Yes, ma'am. According to these records, the deed was transferred into your name 2 years ago. I stared at it. It looked like my name, but it didn't feel like mine. There was something off. The way the letters curved. The way the M was written. Close enough to pass, but not close enough to be real. I didn't sign that, I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. Mr. Hughes nodded again, slower this time. I understand, he said. And I want to make sure we handle this carefully. Carefully. That word meant something now. Because whatever this was, it wasn't a mistake. Mistakes don't repeat every month for 2 years. Mistakes don't create second accounts. Mistakes don't sign documents in your name. This was something else. Something planned. Something deliberate. I leaned back in my chair, letting everything settle. The money. The account. The property. All of it. Moved without me. In my name. But not for me. Is there an address tied to that account? I asked. Mr. Hughes clicked again. Yes, he said. 847 Maple Street. Apartment 2B. I felt something. Cold move through my chest. I've never lived there, I said. He nodded. I understand. No surprise in his voice anymore. Just confirmation. Like he had already reached the same conclusion I had. I sat there for a moment. Very still. Because this was the part where most people would react. Raise their voice. Demand answers. Call someone immediately. But I didn't. Because something inside me had already changed. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was observing. Collecting. Understanding. How much in total? I asked quietly. He looked at the screen again. Did a quick calculation. Approximately $36,000 in transfers, he said. Over the past 2 years. $36,000. I thought about the nights I skipped dinner. The winter I kept the heat low. The medication I rationed. And all that time, that money existed. It just never reached me. I exhaled slowly. Not in anger. Not yet. Just acceptance of the truth. And the property? I asked. He hesitated. Just for a second. Based on current estimates, he said, it's valued at approximately $220,000. I nodded once. Numbers. They were just numbers now. Because what mattered wasn't the amount. It was the intention behind it. Someone had taken what was meant for me and redirected it. Carefully. Quietly. For 2 years. I looked at Mr. Hughes. What happens next? I asked. He folded his hands on the desk. That depends on you, he said. We can begin a formal investigation. We can flag the accounts, trace the transfers, and determine exactly who authorized these changes. I held his gaze. Calm. Steady. Because now, I knew exactly where this was going. And I knew one more thing. I wasn't going to rush this. I wasn't going to confront anyone. Not yet. Because for 2 years, they thought I didn't know. And right now, that was still my greatest advantage. I'd like copies of everything, I said. Every document. Every transfer. Every record. Mr. Hughes nodded. Of course. As he stood up to gather the files, I sat there quietly. No tears. No anger. Just clarity. Because the truth wasn't hidden anymore. It was right there. In black and white. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one being left out of the story. I was the one about to rewrite it. I didn't go home right away. I sat in my car in the parking lot, the engine off, the folder of documents resting on my lap. For a long time, I didn't open it. I just stared at it. Because once I did, everything would become real in a way I couldn't undo. After a while, I exhaled slowly and flipped it open. Page after page. Transfers. Account changes. Authorization forms. All of it neat. Organized. Intentional. Whoever did this didn't rush. They took their time. I turned another page. There it was again. That signature. My name, written in a way that looked almost right. Close enough that no one would question it. Unless they were looking carefully. And I hadn't been. Not until now. I closed the folder gently and leaned back against the seat. There was no confusion anymore. No maybe. No what if. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was control. Carefully built, step by step, while I wasn't paying attention. And suddenly, a memory surfaced. Clearer than the others. It was about a year and a half ago. Claire had come over one afternoon. Daniel was busy, she said. Something about a meeting. She sat at this very same kitchen table, right across from me. Smiling. Calm. Patient. Mom, we're just updating some of your information, she had said. Daniel wants to make sure everything is easier for you moving forward. I remember laughing softly. Toi bauen you down ma cap not, I had said. What do I even have to update? She had reached across the table, placing her hand lightly over mine. That's exactly why we're doing this, she said. So you don't have to worry about anything. And I believed her. Because I wanted to believe her. Because it felt comforting to think someone else was taking care of things. I remember she slid a few papers toward me. Just sign here, she said gently. It's routine. Routine. That word again. I didn't read them carefully. I didn't ask questions. I signed where she pointed. And she thanked me, smiled, folded the papers neatly into her bag, and left. I sat in my car, staring ahead. That was the moment. Not the only one, but one of them. One of the moments where everything shifted, and I didn't even realize it. I tightened my grip slightly on the steering wheel. Not out of anger, but out of understanding. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't accidental. This was built over time. Quietly. Carefully. With patience. And trust. Especially trust. Because without that, none of it would have worked. I finally started the car. The drive home felt different. The same streets. The same houses. But I wasn't the same person driving through them anymore. I wasn't the woman who overlooked details. Who assumed everything was fine. Who believed that silence meant safety. No. Now, I saw things more clearly. Too clearly, maybe. When I got home, I didn't go inside right away. I stood at the front door, looking at the house. This house had held my life. My marriage. My son's childhood. My memories. And for the past 2 years, it had also held a lie. Not inside the walls, but around them. I stepped inside and locked the door behind me. Then I went straight to the desk. The same desk I had opened the night before. I placed the folder down carefully. Then I added to it. Every bill. Every old statement. Every piece of paper with my name on it. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I just organized. Because now, this wasn't about feelings anymore. It was about facts. Evidence. Truth. And I was going to gather all of it. Piece by piece. That afternoon, I made 2 phone calls. The first to the bank. To confirm that all copies of the documents would be ready within the next day. The second, to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Harold's old friend. A lawyer. I still had his number. I hesitated for a moment before dialing. Then I pressed the button. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hello. Richard, it's Margaret Carter. There was a pause. Then recognition. Margaret? It's been a long time. Yes, I said. It has. Another pause. But this one felt different. He could hear something in my voice. What's going on? He asked. I looked down at the folder in front of me. At my name, written on documents I never signed. At numbers that were never mine. At first, I said slowly. I thought I just needed help understanding something. I paused. Then I continued. But now, I think I need help proving something. The line was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke again. Come see me tomorrow, he said. Bring everything you have. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I will. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, looking at the papers, thinking about Daniel, about the look on his face at the table, the confusion, the genuine confusion. He didn't know. I was certain of that now, which meant there was only one person who did. I didn't say her name out loud. I didn't need to. Because the truth was already there. Clear. Precise. And waiting. I closed the folder and rested my hand on top of it. Tomorrow, things would move forward. Not loudly. Not emotionally. But carefully. Because for 2 years, she had been one step ahead. Now, it was my turn. The next morning, I arrived at Richard's office 10 minutes early. Old habit. Harold used to say, if you're not early, you're late. I hadn't thought about that in years. But that morning, everything from the past seemed to come back sharper. Clearer. Maybe because for the first time in a long time, I was paying attention to every detail. Richard's office was just as I remembered. Dark wood furniture. Shelves lined with thick legal books. The quiet kind of place where decisions were made carefully and permanently. He stood up when I walked in. Margaret, he said, his voice softer than I expected. Richard, I replied. No small talk. We didn't need it. I placed the folder on his desk. This is everything I have so far, I said. He nodded and opened it immediately. Page by page, he went through the documents. Slowly, carefully. He didn't interrupt. Didn't ask questions right away. Just read. The room stayed quiet except for the sound of paper turning. After a few minutes, he stopped, leaning back slightly in his chair. That's not your signature, he said. Not a question. A statement. I shook my head. No, I replied. He tapped lightly on the page. It's close, he said. Close enough to pass in routine processing, but not close enough to hold up under scrutiny. That word again. Scrutiny. That's what this needed. He flipped to the next section. These transfers, he continued. $1, $500 a month. Consistent. Structured. He paused. This isn't random. This is planned. I didn't react. Because I already knew that. But hearing someone else say it made it solid. Real. And this account, he said, pointing to the number ending in 4782. It's not yours. But it was set up to look like yours. I nodded once. Yes. He looked at me then. Directly. Margaret, has anyone had access to your personal documents? Your ID? Your banking information? Anything like that? I didn't answer immediately. Because I didn't need to think about it. I already knew. Yes, I said. My daughter-in-law. He didn't seem surprised. Just nodded slowly. And your son? He asked. I shook my head. No, I said firmly. He didn't know. That part. I was certain of. Because I had seen his face. That confusion, you can't fake that. Richard studied me for a moment. Then he closed the folder gently. All right, he said. Let's talk about what this actually is. I sat still, waiting. This, he continued, tapping the folder lightly, is identity misuse, financial manipulation, and likely fraud. He didn't raise his voice, didn't dramatize it, but the weight of those words was heavy. Fraud. I repeated it silently in my mind, not as an accusation, but as a fact. Now, he said, we have 2 paths forward. I listened. First, we confront immediately. File a report. Freeze everything. Bring your son into it. He paused. Second, we take our time. That second option, that was the one I was already leaning toward. We gather more evidence, he continued. We trace every transaction. We confirm ownership of the property. We identify exactly who initiated each change and how. He looked at me carefully. And most importantly, we do it without alerting the person responsible. There it was. The strategy. Not loud. Not emotional. Precise. I nodded slowly. I don't want to confront anyone yet, I said. My voice was calm. Steady. Because this wasn't about reacting anymore. It was about control. Richard leaned forward slightly. Then we proceed carefully, he said. He opened a notepad and began writing. First, I'll request full transaction records from the bank. Not just summaries, everything. He wrote. Something else. Second, we'll pull the official property records. Deed transfers, signatures, timestamps. Another note. Third, we identify the account holder of that secondary account. I watched him as he worked. Focused. Methodical. The same way Harold used to approach problems. One step at a time. No rushing. No guessing. Margaret, Richard said, looking up again. Once we confirm everything, this becomes very straightforward legally. I tilted my head slightly. How so? Because if what you're telling me is accurate, then everything taken can be traced and recovered. Recovered. The word hung there for a moment. But strangely, it wasn't the money I was thinking about. It was something else. Trust. Time. the quiet dignity I had lost without even realizing it. Richard closed his notebook. "I'll start immediately," he said. "But you need to do something as well." I looked at him. "What?" "Act normal. Simple. Direct. Don't change your routine," he continued. "Don't confront anyone. Don't ask questions that might raise suspicion." I nodded. I understood. Because for 2 years, I had already been living that role. The unaware mother. The quiet one. The one who didn't ask questions. The one who trusted. Now, I would play that role again. But this time, it wouldn't be real. It would be strategy. I stood up slowly, gathering my things. "Richard," I said, "how long will this take?" He thought for a moment. "A few days to start seeing patterns," he said. "A couple of weeks to build something solid." I nodded. "I can wait." And I meant it. Because patience was no longer something I was forced into. It was something I was choosing. As I walked out of his office, the air outside felt different. Cooler. Sharper. Like the world had shifted just slightly. But maybe it was just me. Because now, I wasn't walking through my life blindly anymore. I was walking through it, knowing exactly where I was going. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't behind. I was catching up. 3 days passed. Quiet days. On the surface, nothing had changed. I still woke up at the same time. Still made my coffee. Still watered the small plants by the window Harold used to take care of. And when Daniel called that Wednesday evening, I answered like I always did. "Hi, sweetheart." His voice sounded lighter. Almost relieved. "Hey, Mom. I've been thinking about Sunday. That whole condo thing, it doesn't make sense." I leaned back in my chair, holding the phone steady. "No," I said gently. "It doesn't." There was a pause on the other end. "I'm going to check with my assistant," he continued. "There must have been some kind of mistake." Mistake. I closed my eyes for just a second. "Maybe," I said softly. Because right now, I needed him to believe that. We talked a little longer. About simple things. The weather. His work. Normal conversation. But underneath it, I could hear it. That uncertainty starting to grow in him. He just didn't know where to place it yet. After we hung up, I placed the phone down carefully. I didn't feel guilty for not telling him. Not yet. Because this wasn't the time for emotions. This was the time for clarity. And clarity takes patience. The next morning, Richard called. "I have something," he said. His tone was calm, but there was something underneath it. Something sharper. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I replied. When I arrived, he didn't waste time. The folder on his desk was thicker now. More documents. More records. More truth. He slid one page toward me. "Take a look at this," he said. I leaned forward. It was a call log. Not mine. The bank's internal record. 2 years ago. December. A note attached to it. "Client requested update to account routing information." I felt my chest tighten slightly. "Who made the call?" I asked. Richard tapped the line just below it. "According to the record, your daughter-in-law." There it was. Not suspicion anymore. Not assumption. Confirmation. "She provided updated account details," he continued. "Claimed there had been a change in your banking information." I didn't speak. Because there was nothing left to say about that part. We both knew what it meant. He flipped to the next page. "This is where it gets more specific," he said. Another document. This one, an email thread. Between Daniel's assistant and Claire. I read it slowly. Line by line. Professional tone. Polite. Wording. But the content. Clear. Claire instructing the assistant to update the mailing address. Claire confirming account numbers. Claire asking to handle everything directly so Daniel wouldn't be bothered. I exhaled slowly. Not out of shock, but recognition. This was her pattern. Quiet control. Always framed as helpful. Always positioned as efficiency. Richard watched me carefully. "You see the structure now," he said. I nodded once. Yes. Because it was all there. The call. The account change. The redirection of funds. The control over communication. Every piece, connected. "This wasn't impulsive," he added. "This was built step by step." "I know," I said quietly. He leaned back slightly. "There's one more thing." He reached for another document. This one different. Property records. The lake house. But something had changed. "The deed," he said, pointing to a section. "It was transferred into your name, briefly." Briefly. I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "It didn't stay there," he replied. He turned the page. Another transfer. A few weeks later, ownership moved again. Not to me. Not anymore. To another name. I read it twice. Just to be sure. Then I leaned back slowly. "Her family?" I asked. Richard nodded. Yes. Of course. It made sense. The money, the property, the address on Maple Street. All of it, leading away from me, and toward them. I sat there in silence for a moment. Because this was the full picture. Not just money being redirected. Not just a fake account. But a complete system. Designed to take. And never give back. Richard closed the folder gently. We have enough now, he said. Enough. The word landed differently this time. Not as relief, but as readiness. Enough for what? I asked. He looked at me directly. To move forward, he said. I nodded slowly. Because I understood what that meant. The quiet phase was ending. The part where I watched. Where I gathered. Where I stayed invisible. That part was over. Now, it was time to decide how this would end. I stood up, smoothing my coat slightly. Not yet, I said. Richard raised an eyebrow. I want one more thing, I continued. He waited. I want her to think everything is still. Fine. A small pause. Then he nodded. Understood. Because he saw it too. This wasn't just about proving what happened. It was about timing, control, precision. I picked up the folder, held it firmly this time. Not like something fragile, but like something powerful. Because now, I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't searching. I wasn't behind. I had the truth. And more importantly, they didn't know that I had it. As I walked out of the office, one thought stayed with me. Clear, steady, unshaken. For 2 years, she had been playing this game. Quietly, carefully, believing I would never notice. Now, it was my turn to play. I didn't change anything. That was the hardest part. Not the discovery. Not the documents. Not even the truth. But pretending nothing had changed. The next few days, I followed my routine exactly. Same grocery store. Same morning walks. Same quiet evenings in the living room. From the outside, I was still the same woman. The one who didn't ask questions. The one who accepted things as they were. And that was exactly what I needed them to believe. Daniel came by that Saturday. Unannounced. That alone told me something. He was thinking. Still trying to make sense of things. Hey, Mom, he said as he stepped inside. He looked tired. Not physically, but mentally. Like something wasn't sitting right with him. I brought you some groceries, he added, setting the bags on the counter. I smiled gently. Thank you, sweetheart. I didn't mention the money. Didn't mention the condo. Didn't mention anything. Because this wasn't his moment yet. He lingered in the kitchen for a while, watching me move around, like he was trying to see something he had missed before. Mom, he finally said. I turned slightly. Yes. I checked with my assistant, he said. Everything was processed. The condo, the payments, all of it. I nodded slowly. I'm sure that's what the records show, I replied. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? I met his eyes. Calm. Steady. It means sometimes what's written down isn't the whole story. He didn't respond right away, but I could see it. That shift. Small, but real. Doubt. Not toward me. Toward something else. Or someone else. Claire arrived about 20 minutes later. Right on time. Like she always was. Perfect timing. Perfect smile. Perfect control. Hi, Mom, she said warmly, stepping inside. Her eyes moved quickly. First to Daniel. Then to me. Measuring. Always measuring. How are you feeling? She asked. Just fine, I said. And I meant it. Because now, I was no longer confused. And that alone changed everything. We sat down for lunch. Simple. Quiet. But underneath it, there was tension. Not loud. Not obvious. But there. Daniel asked a few questions. Careful ones. About the bank. About paperwork. Claire answered most of them. Before I could. Everything was handled correctly, she said smoothly. There must have been some kind of clerical error. Clerical error. I almost smiled. Because now, I knew exactly how far that word was from the truth. I didn't challenge her. Didn't correct her. I just nodded lightly. Maybe, I said. And left it there. Because this wasn't about proving her wrong in that moment. It was about letting her keep talking. Keep believing. Keep feeling safe. After lunch, Daniel stepped outside to take a call, leaving just the two of us in the kitchen. Claire stood by the counter, rinsing a glass. Her movements were precise, controlled, but I could see it now. The small tension in her shoulders. The way her fingers moved just a little faster than usual. She was nervous, not panicked, but aware. Something didn't feel right to her. Not yet, but soon. Margaret, she said softly, without turning around. You seem different. I paused for a moment. Then I walked over slowly, standing just a few feet behind her. How so? I asked. She turned then, smiled. but it didn't reach her eyes. I don't know, she said. Just quieter. I held her gaze. Calm. Unmoved. Sometimes, I said gently, people just start noticing things. Her smile faltered. Just for a second. Then returned. Polished. Carefully placed. I'm sure everything will get sorted out, she said quickly. I'm sure it will, I replied. And that was the truth. Just not the way she thought. Daniel came back inside a few minutes later. The moment passed. But something had shifted. Not visibly. Not yet. But, underneath it all, the balance had changed. That evening, after they left, I sat at the desk again. The folder in front of me. Now thicker. Now complete. I didn't open it. I didn't need to anymore. I already knew what was inside. Instead, I picked up my phone and made one call. Richard answered immediately. I'm ready, I said. There was a pause. Then his voice. Are you sure? I looked around the room. At the house. At the life I had built. At everything that had been quietly taken. And everything I was about to take back. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Because the waiting, the observing, the silence, it had served its purpose. Now, it was time to move. The next morning, everything began quietly. No loud announcements. No confrontation. Just movement. Precise. Controlled. Exactly the way it needed to be. At 9 a.m., Richard called me. We've initiated the first steps, he said. I stood by the kitchen window, phone in hand, watching the sunlight stretch across the yard. What does that mean? I asked. It means, he replied, the account ending in 4782 has been flagged. Temporarily frozen pending verification. Frozen. Such a simple word. But I knew exactly what it would do. It would interrupt the flow. The quiet system that had been running uninterrupted for 2 years. And the property? I asked. We filed a notice of dispute on the title, he said. No transfers can happen until ownership is clarified. I nodded slowly. Good. There was a pause on the line. This is where things may start to surface, he added. You need to stay consistent. I will, I said. And I meant it. Because now, every step mattered. By the afternoon, the first ripple appeared. My phone rang. Claire. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. Hello. Her voice came quickly. Tighter than usual. Margaret, have you noticed anything unusual with your bank account today? I leaned back in my chair. Slowly. Carefully. No, I said. Should I? A pause. Too long. Then, I just received a notification about some kind of verification delay, she said. It's probably nothing. Just routine. Routine. That word again. I almost smiled. Respond right away. I could hear it now. The shift. The first crack. Have you spoken to anyone? She asked carefully. There it was. Not direct, but close enough. About what? I asked. Her voice softened. Too soft. Oh, just general account maintenance. Sometimes banks do random checks. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. That makes sense, I said. And I left it there. Because the more she spoke, the more she revealed. After we hung up, I placed the phone down gently. No rush. No reaction. Just observation. That evening, Daniel called. His tone was different this time. More serious. Mom, something strange is going on, he said. I sat quietly, letting him continue. My assistant says one of the accounts we set up, it's been flagged. There's a hold on it. I exhaled softly. Really? Yes, he said. And the property, the lake house, there's some kind of dispute notice on it now. Silence filled the space between us for a moment. Then, Mom, did you talk to someone? The question was direct this time. I didn't answer immediately. Because this moment, this was where everything started to shift for him. I went to the bank, I said finally. The truth. Just not all of it. And he asked. I asked questions, I replied. That was enough. I could hear it in his breathing. That realization beginning to form. Not complete yet, but close. I'm coming over tomorrow, he said. I nodded slowly. All right. After the call ended, I sat in the quiet again. But this time, it felt different. Not heavy, not confusing, just still. Because everything was moving now. Not fast, but exactly the way it needed to. The next day, Daniel arrived early. Earlier than usual. Claire wasn't with him. That alone told me everything. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His face wasn't confused anymore. It was focused. Mom, he said, we need to talk. I gestured toward the table. Sit down, I replied calmly. He didn't sit immediately. Instead, he looked at me. Really looked at me. like he was seeing something he hadn't noticed before. Did you receive any of the money I've been sending you? He asked. There it was. The question. Clear. Direct. I met his eyes. No, I said. The word landed between us. Heavy. Final. He nodded slowly, as if something inside him had just locked into place. And the condo? He asked. I've never seen it, I replied. Silence. Longer this time. Then he sat down, finally, running a hand through his hair. This doesn't make sense, he said. But his voice didn't sound like he believed that anymore. Because deep down, he already knew. He just hadn't said it yet. And I didn't rush him. I didn't push. Because this moment had to belong to him. The realization, the connection, the truth. It couldn't be forced. It had to arrive. And I could see it now. In the way his shoulders stiffened. In the way his jaw tightened slightly. In the silence that followed. He was getting there. Step by step. Just like I had. And this time, I wasn't behind the story anymore. I was sitting right in the center of it. Waiting. For the final piece. To fall into place. Daniel didn't speak for a long time. He just sat there. Elbows on his knees. Hands clasped together. Looking down, like he was trying to rearrange everything in his head. I didn't interrupt. Because this part had to happen in silence. I sent it every month, he said finally. His voice was lower now. Controlled. But I could hear it. That shift. From confusion to something else. I know, I replied quietly. He looked up at me. You knew? I nodded. I know now. That distinction mattered. Because I wasn't accusing him. I was letting him walk toward the truth on his own. He leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose. And the property. I signed everything, he continued. Claire handled the paperwork, but I approved it. I saw the documents. I held his gaze. And who handled the details? I asked. He didn't answer immediately, but he didn't need to. The answer was already there. Claire. I trusted her, he said. There it was. Not a defense. Not an excuse. Just a realization. I know, I said softly. Because I did. Because I had done the same thing. For 2 years. We sat there in silence again. But this silence was different. It wasn't empty. It was full. Full of things being understood. Without being said. Finally, he stood up. I need to talk. To her, he said. The instinct. Immediate. Direct. But I shook my head gently. Not yet. He frowned slightly. Why not? I leaned forward just a little. Because right now, she doesn't know what we know. That stopped him. You could see it. The shift in his thinking. From reaction to strategy. She thinks everything is still under control. I continued. He stared at me. Really stared this time. Like he was seeing a different version of me. And maybe he was. So what do we do? He asked. Simple question. But the answer wasn't simple. We wait, I said. His jaw tightened slightly. For what? For the right moment, I replied. Because timing was everything now. I stood up slowly, walking over to the desk. The folder was there. I picked it up and brought it back to the table. Then I placed it in front of him. Look, I said. He opened it. At first, he just skimmed. Then, he slowed down. Page by page. Line by line. His expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. The tightening around his eyes. The stillness in his shoulders. Recognition. Understanding. And then, anger. Not loud, but controlled. Focused. He stopped at the signature page. That's not yours, he said. No, I replied. He flipped to the next section. The account transfers. Every month. Same amount. Same pattern. He didn't say anything this time. But I could see it. He was connecting everything. The calls. The paperwork. The way Claire handled things. All of it. When he finally looked up, there was no confusion left. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked. The question wasn't harsh. Just honest. I met his eyes. Because I didn't know, I said. Then I paused. And when I started to understand, I needed to be sure. He nodded slowly. That made sense to him. Because he was doing the same thing now. Processing. Rebuilding the truth piece by piece. I'm sorry, Mom, he said quietly. I didn't respond right away. Because apologies. They come from a place of emotion. And right now, this wasn't about emotion. It's not about that, I said gently. And it wasn't. This was bigger than regret. Bigger than blame. This was about what came next. Daniel closed the folder slowly. So what's the plan? He asked. I took a breath. Then answered. We let her walk into it. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? I mean, we don't confront her yet, I said. We let everything continue just enough for her to believe she's still in control. He listened, carefully. And then, I said, we show her everything. Simple, clear, final. He sat back, considering it. This wasn't easy for him. I could see that. Because this wasn't just about money. This was his wife. The person he had trusted. The person he had built a life with. But the truth doesn't change based on who it involves. Okay, he said finally. Just one word. But it meant something. It meant he had chosen. Not me. Not her. But the truth. And that was enough. We didn't talk much after that. There was nothing left to say for now. As he stood up to leave, he paused at the door. Mom, I looked at him. I won't let this continue, he said. His voice was steady, firm. I nodded once. I know. Because now, he wasn't the same man who walked in that morning. Just like I wasn't the same woman. Something had shifted. Completely. And for the first time, we weren't on opposite sides of the unknown anymore. We were standing in the same place. Looking at the same truth. And waiting. For the moment. To bring it into the light. We didn't wait long. Not because we were in a hurry. But because everything was already in place. 2 days later, Daniel invited Claire over for dinner. At my house. The same table. The same chairs. The same quiet space where everything had started. But this time, it wasn't the same. I set the table like I always did. Plates aligned. Glasses polished. Napkins folded neatly. Simple things. Familiar things. Because routine has a way of keeping people comfortable. And tonight, comfort was part of the plan. Claire arrived right on time. Of course she did. She stepped inside with that same composed smile. Margaret, she said warmly. I nodded slightly. Claire. Daniel stood behind her. Quiet. Watching. Not saying much. That was new. We sat down together. Dinner started like any other. Small talk. Polite conversation. Nothing unusual. But underneath it, there was something else. Something. Waiting. Claire spoke about work. About a friend. About plans for the weekend. Normal things. But I noticed something now. Something I hadn't seen before. She kept glancing at Daniel. Checking. Measuring. Trying to read him. Because something had changed. And she could feel it. Even if she didn't understand it yet. Halfway through dinner, Daniel set his fork down. Gently. The sound was soft. But it carried. Claire looked at him immediately. Is everything okay? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me. Just for a second. And that was enough. I gave a small nod. Not obvious. But clear. It was time. Daniel turned back to Claire. Actually, no, he said calmly. The room shifted. Just slightly. But enough. What do you mean? She asked. Still composed. Still controlled. But her voice. A little tighter now. Daniel reached into his bag. And placed the folder on the table. Right between them. This, he said, is what I mean. Claire's eyes moved to the folder. Then back to him. What is that? She asked. Her tone, careful. Measured. Daniel didn't respond. He just opened it. Turned it toward her. And let her see. The documents. The transfers. The signatures. All of it. For the first time, Claire didn't speak immediately. She just stared. Reading. Processing. And then, that moment came. Small. But undeniable. Her expression changed. Not dramatically. But enough. The smile faded. The control slipped. Just for a second. Then she looked up. What is this? She asked. Daniel didn't raise his voice. Didn't accuse. He just spoke. It's everything, he said. Simple. Direct. Claire let out a small breath. Then shook her head slightly. There must be some kind of misunderstanding, she said quickly. Of course. That was expected. That was always the first response. Daniel didn't react to it. He just pointed to the page. The account, he said. The transfers. The property. All in Mom's name. All redirected. Claire's eyes flickered again. Faster this time. More visible. I handled the paperwork. Yes, she said. But everything was authorized. You approved it. Daniel nodded once. I approved helping my mother, he said. Then he paused. I didn't approve. This. Silence. Heavy now? Claire looked at me. Finally. Directly. Margaret, did you go to the bank? She asked. I met her gaze. Calm. Unshaken. Yes, I said. Nothing more. Nothing less. She held my eyes for a moment. Trying to read something. Trying to find weakness. But there was none left. Because now, I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. And so did she. Claire leaned back slightly in her chair. Her posture changed. Subtly. From open to guarded. This isn't what it looks like, she said. But her voice didn't carry the same certainty anymore. Daniel didn't argue, didn't interrupt. He just let the silence sit. Because sometimes, silence says more than anything else. And in that silence, everything became clear. Not just to me, not just to him, but to her as well. The truth was no longer hidden, no longer controlled, no longer hers to manage. It was out, on the table, in front of all of us. And there was no way to put it back. No one spoke for a long time. The room felt still, not tense in the way people imagine. No raised voices, no dramatic gestures, just quiet. The kind of quiet where everything has already been said, even if no one has said it out loud yet. Claire looked down at the papers again, then back at Daniel, then at me. Her expression had changed completely now. No more softness, no more warmth, just calculation. How long have you known? She asked. Her voice was steady again, but different, sharper. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth wasn't about timing. It was about understanding. Long enough, I said finally. She held my gaze, trying to find something. A crack, a hesitation. But there was none, because everything inside me had already settled. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Claire, just tell me the truth, he said. Not angry, not shouting, just tired. And that tiredness was heavier than any anger could have been. She looked at him, really looked this time. And for a moment, I thought she might try to explain, to soften it, to shape it into something else. But she didn't. Instead, she exhaled and leaned back in her chair. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she said. There it was. Not denial, not confusion, just justification. I was managing things, she continued. You were busy. Your mother didn't understand finances. I thought, she stopped, because even she could hear it. How it sounded. Daniel didn't interrupt. He just listened. And somehow, that made it worse. I wasn't stealing, she added quickly. I was reallocating, making sure things were used properly. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. People rarely call things what they are. They rename them, so they can live with them. Daniel shook his head slowly. You took money meant for my mother, he said. Clear. Simple. No extra words. And the house, he added. Claire didn't answer right away. Because that part, there was no way to reshape it. It was temporary, she said finally. Temporary. Another word. Another layer. Daniel leaned back. His eyes closed for just a second. Not in anger. In acceptance. Because now, there was nothing left to figure out. The truth was complete. And once the truth is complete, there's only one thing left to decide. What comes next? I've already spoken to a lawyer, he said. Claire's eyes snapped back to him. Sharp. Focused. What does that mean? It means everything is being reviewed, he replied. The accounts. The transfers. The property. Her posture shifted again. Subtle, but clear. For the first time, she wasn't in control. This doesn't need to go that far, she said quickly. But her voice didn't carry the same confidence anymore. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He just looked at her. And in that look, there was something final. I trusted you, he said. That was it. Not an accusation. Not a list of everything she had done. Just that. And somehow, it carried more weight than anything else could have. Claire didn't reply, because there was nothing she could say to that. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it felt different. Not heavy, not uncertain, just finished. After a while, she stood up. Slowly, carefully, like she was trying to hold on to something that was already gone. I'll fix this, she said. But no one answered. Because some things can't be fixed by words anymore. She picked up her bag, paused for a second, then walked out. The door closed quietly behind her. And just like that, it was over. Not everything, but that part, that chapter. Daniel stayed seated for a while, looking at the table, at the papers, at everything laid out in front of him. I didn't see it, he said finally. I reached over and placed my hand gently on his. I didn't either, I replied, because that was the truth. And sometimes, that's the hardest part to accept. Not what someone else did, but what we didn't see, what we didn't question, what we trusted without looking closer. The weeks that followed were quiet, not empty, but steady. The accounts were restored. The funds were traced and returned. The property was legally transferred back, properly this time. Step by step, carefully, just like everything else had been undone. Daniel handled most of it, not out of obligation, but out of understanding. And slowly, things began to settle, not back to what they were. Because some things don't go back. They move forward. Different, clearer, stronger. One afternoon, a few weeks later, I stood by the same kitchen window, coffee in hand, sunlight stretching across the yard, just like that morning, before everything changed. But this time, I felt different. Not lighter, not happier in the way people expect, just steady, because I understood something now, something I hadn't seen before. Trust isn't about giving everything away without question, and love isn't about staying silent to keep peace. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is simply pay attention. I took a slow sip of my coffee, and for the first time in a long time, the house felt like mine again. Not just the walls, not just the space, but the life inside it. And as I stood there, in the quiet, I realized something else. For 2 years, I had been living in a story written by someone else.